Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Gareth here from tastycheats.com. In this video, I'm going to discuss and demonstrate how to set up a simple business card in Adobe InDesign. Now, if you're new to InDesign, I'll be taking you through all the details and explaining all the things you need to be aware of when setting up a document like this. Later, we will be exporting this document ready for print. So let's take a look at what we will be creating. So here is the business card design open in InDesign. Currently, we are looking at this in preview mode. So if I press W, we will enter into normal mode. And here we can see all the guides and frame outlines and so on. Now, if you're new to this course and wish to take a closer look at this document and get all the assets to build your business card, you can find it in the project folder. Remember, you will also need to install all the fonts when you open the document. That can also be found in the project folder. Download link is in the description. So previously in the course, I spoke about my design process and how I designed the composition. In this video, I will also be referring to my scamp design so you can get an understanding of the whole process. So here in InDesign, we can see we have two pages to the canvas. We have the front and the back. On the front, we have a solid background with the logo on top. I'll press W to enter preview mode and we can get a better look at that. And if I come down, we can see the back of the business card. On the left, we have the typesetting, and on the right, we have the brand motif. If I press W to enter normal mode, we can see the composition. Excellent. So now I'm going to set up a new document so we can start this from scratch. But before that, with the project folder open, navigate to the design process folder. In that, I'm going to open the design process PDF. So here are my ideas for the business card and how I developed the idea we are going to create in InDesign. So in this occasion, I am going to go with the simple approach, place the logo on the front and use the brand motif on the back. So let's make a start. So in InDesign, I'm going to come up to File, New and choose Document. Up will pop the New Document menu. So it's from here we are going to specify our document size and properties. So first I'll set the intent to print. I'll set the number of pages to 2 because all we want is a front and back. For now, I'm going to leave the facing pages box checked. You will see why shortly. I'll start with page number 1 and come and set the document size. Now again, with the project folder open, navigate to the project assets folder. In that, I'm going to open the project brief folder and open the brief document. So in the brief, it specifies the dimensions of the business card. We need to make the business card to 85mm by 55mm. So back in InDesign, I'll make sure the orientation is set to landscape and set the width to 85mm and the height to 55mm. Now for columns, I'm just going to leave that set to 1 as I don't plan on including more than one column in this design. For the margins, I'm just going to leave that as default for now, and you will see why shortly. Next, I'm going to toggle down bleed and slug. Now back in the brief document, it states that bleed on all documents should be 3mm. So back in InDesign, I'll set the bleed to 3mm on the top, bottom, inside and outside. Great. So once I'm happy with the composition, I'll press OK. Upon click, we now have the new document set up. Now check out the current composition of the pages. Looking a little awkward, right? Well, that's because I left facing pages checked in the document setup. So I'll come up to File, hit Document Setup and uncheck facing pages. Click OK, and now they are nicely above each other. Nice. So if I press W repeatedly on the keyboard, we can toggle between preview and normal mode. Now in normal mode, if you cannot see your guides, simply press Command:. So in normal mode, the red line around the outline represents the bleed, and the magenta lines on the inside represent the inner margin and column guides. Later, when we come to export the document, you will see how the bleed comes into play. So now I am in normal mode. The document is ready and we can start composing the design elements. But before that, If I come back to the brief document, it states on the print instructions that for the business card, we will need to set up this to be printed using Pantone colours. Okay, so before we start to build the design elements, we need to make sure we have the correct Pantone colours ready to apply to the design. So with the project folder open, I'll navigate to the project assets folder. In that, open the branding folder and open the branding document. So here we are now in Adobe Illustrator, where the branding document was originally composed. Here we can clearly see the Pantone color references. So now I'm going to take the Pantone references and get the colors in InDesign. So to make this real easy, I'm going to select the type that states the Pantone references. I'll copy, come into InDesign and just paste. So at a glance, I can see the Pantone references. Great. So in InDesign, I'll come over to the swatches panel. If you cannot see yours, you can come to Window, scroll down and activate your swatches panel there. So I'll come up to the top right with the little menu icon. From the menu, I'll select New Color Swatch and up will pop the menu. So from the color mode, I'll click and look for the Pantone Solid Coated option. I'll select that, and then in the Pantone box, I'll look over to my reference in the canvas area and type in the first swatch, 433. When that appears, I'll make sure it's selected and click Add. And just like that, we have the new Pantone swatch in the swatches panel ready to use. Now we still have the new color swatch menu box open, so I'll go ahead and type in the next swatch, 424, then click Add. 7702, Add, and lastly 2593, Add and click Done. So just like that, we now have the 4 Pantone colours in the document. So with the selection tool, I'll click the reference in the canvas area and press backspace to remove them. So to tidy up my swatches panel, I'll select the top swatch I will not use, press and hold Shift and select the last just above the first Pantone, and click the delete icon at the bottom of the panel. So now all we can see are the colours we want to use. Perfect. So now I'm ready, I'm going to start with the base of the business card. If we look at the finished design, the background on both is the dark grey. So to make this real easy, in my new document, I'm going to come over to the master pages in the pages panel. So looking at the pages panel, we can see a visual representation of the document set up here. And just above this is the master pages. So I'll come up to a master page and double click on this. Upon click, we will see the master page, in this case, the master spread. So master pages allow us to place design elements into them in a single instance. We can then apply the master pages to multiple pages inside the main document. This can save us time duplicating elements and updating elements. Also, this can prove helpful when naming pages, more on that later. Master pages are vital for an efficient and streamlined workflow, one of the main benefits of using InDesign for print. Okay, so here I'm going to come over to the menu and select the rectangle tool and drag a box to cover the canvas area on the page. Notice how I start from the edge of the bleed in the top left and drag down to the bleed in the bottom right. So with the new box, I'm going to come over to the menu at the bottom and make sure the fill color is set to the dark grey Pantone by selecting it in the swatches menu. Easy. The last thing I'm going to do is select the box. Notice how we can see the square points around the bounding box. So these are indicating the center and middle points. So I'll press Command R to activate rulers around the canvas area, and I'll click out a guide from the left, but I'll drag it across in the pasteboard area like so, and I'll drag another from the top down in the pasteboard area. So that defines the center and middle point line. Nice. Once I'm happy with the box, I'll come into the page display in the pages panel and double click on page 1. This will just exit the master page. Notice now how the background is applied to both the front and back page. Now, if we look closely in the page display in the pages panel and look at the pages, we can see that on the display we have the letter assigned to each page. This means that that particular master page is applied. More on that later. So now we have the background set up, let's get the logo in. So for this, I'm going to jump back into the branding document and select the logo that is set on the dark grey background. Now currently in Illustrator, this is a group of individual vector shapes that's been grouped together. With the logo selected, I'll copy, come into InDesign and press Command V to paste. And there is the logo. Now because InDesign works with vector shapes, the vectors from Illustrator will be compatible with InDesign. So the logo will carry across perfectly. Nice. So I'll drag that into the center and line that up perfectly, and I'll press W to take a look in preview mode. So currently that logo is looking a little too big on the canvas area. So with it selected, I'll press my mouse cursor over the bottom right point on the bounding box. I'll press and hold Shift and Alt and click and drag in a little to get a more considered composition. I'll press W to make sure the logo is in the center. I'll press W and that's looking great. But now we have a problem. If we take a look over in the swatches panel, we can see we have some new swatches here. We have some CMYK swatches. So how did they get there? Well, when we pasted the logo from the branding document, it carried the swatches across because the vectors were set up in CMYK in that document. Now this is easy to fix. Now bear in mind that the colours applied to that logo are now CMYK, and we do not want that. We need them all set to Pantone. So over in the swatches panel, I'm simply going to remove the CMYK swatches and replace them with the Pantone. So I'll start with the blue CMYK swatch. So I'll select it, right click and delete. Now upon trying to delete it, InDesign will say, hang on a second, you have design elements in the canvas area with this colour. If you delete it, you need to replace the colour. So from the define swatch, I will select the blue Pantone I wish to replace it with. Upon clicking OK, the CMYK swatch will be removed, and the design element in the canvas area that was previously filled with the CMYK swatch will now be filled with the Pantone swatch. Very convenient. So I'll do the same for the rest of the CMYK swatches. I'll delete them and replace them with the right Pantone colour. Soon I'll have my logo set to the correct Pantones and the CMYK swatches removed. So that finishes the composition for the cover. So moving on to the back, here we are going to place the type and motif. So I'll start with the type. So looking at my design process document, I decided to place the type on the left and have some stroke lines on the right with the pattern. So let's set this up. So back in InDesign, I'll press W for normal mode, I'll come over to the Pages panel and make sure I select the back page, page 2. With it selected, I'll come up to the top menu and click Layout and select Margins and Columns. Currently we can see the top, left, bottom and right margin is set to 12. I'm now going to set this to 10 and click OK. So now I have created a nice inside margin guide here. So let's begin. With the project folder open, navigate to the Project Assets folder and in that, the Copy folder and open the first document, Business Card Copy. So this is the copy we have been provided to include in the business card. So back in InDesign, I'll come over to the menu and choose the Type tool. With it active, I will click to start on the left inside margin and just drag and draw out to create a type box like so. Upon release, we will see the type prompt. Now before I start to type, I'm going to define my font. So up in the control panel, I'll click into the font name and type Open. And I'll select Open Sans Light. You will need to install the font first if you wish to follow along. So I'll set the font to 12 points. I'll set the colour to the blue Pantone. So back in the copy document, I'll copy the name, come back into InDesign and paste. And that's looking okay for now. Now depending on your design, you may wish to leave it as it is. But on this occasion, I want the name to be in all caps. So I'll select the all caps icon up in the control panel. Now, on this occasion, I want a little more space between the letters. So I'm going to tweak the tracking. So up in the control panel, I'm going to set the tracking to 100 plus. Once happy, I'll click on the selection tool in the menu to deselect the type. So with the selection tool, I'll just drag the type box in a little to fit around the type like so. Now for this business card, there is going to be various type sizes and colours. So to make it easy, I'm going to create separate type boxes for the various type elements. So with the top type box selected, I'm going to press and hold Alt and click and drag down to duplicate the type box like so, and just place it neatly under the top type box. So I'm going to double click into the box and select the type. I'll make sure in the menu that the font color is selected, and I'll change this to the purple Pantone. Now this type box is going to be for the job title, so I want the font to be a little smaller. So up in the control panel, I'll change the font size to 6. So back in the copy document, I'll copy the job title, come back into InDesign and paste. So I'll choose the selection tool from the menu and press W to take a look. And that's looking okay. But because the font is particularly small under the name, I may want to add more boldness to it for the sake of legibility. So I'll click the type box, double click to go inside and select the type. With it all selected, I'll come up to the font in the control panel and change the font to regular instead of light. I'll choose the selection tool and click off to deselect. This will add a little more boldness. Perfect. So I'll press W again to enter into normal mode, and with the selection tool, I'll just click and drag the box up a little. So next I want to add the contact details. So again, with the job description box selected, I'll press and hold Alt and click and drag down like so. So I'll drag the box to meet the top of the center line, and I'll drag the type box down to meet the bottom of the inside margin. This should give me plenty of space to fill with type. So back in the copy document, I'll copy the contact details, and here I'll copy the web address as well. Back in InDesign, I'll select all the type and simply paste in to replace. So now the type is in, I'm going to reformat it. So first, with all the type selected, I'll come up to the control panel and uncheck all caps. I'll change the colour to the grey Pantone, and because the font is small, I'll keep the font set to regular. So I want the overall look to be minimal, so I'll remove the type from email, mobile and telephone and just leave the E, M and D to indicate what they are. Now to get equal spacing of the email address, mobile and direct phone numbers from the letters before, I'm going to use a little trick. So after E, M and D, I'm simply going to press Tab on the keyboard. Notice how this pushes the type far away, but they are all aligned. Next, I'm going to select all the type above and press and hold Command and Shift and then press T. This will now pull up the tabs ruler. So what I'm going to do here is carefully come into the ruler area above, and where I think I want the space to be, I'll click once. Notice the type snap to that space, and we can see a little arrow on the ruler. So as I move this, I can redefine the tab space. Once I'm happy, I can close the tab ruler, select the E, M and D individually, and up in the control panel, I'll change the font to bold. I'll choose the selection tool to deselect the type and press W, and that's looking nice. Though right now, it's looking a little tight. So I'll select the type box, double click into it and select all the copy. Up in the control panel, I'll change the leading to 8, and that will create just a little more space between the lines. Lastly, I'll select the web address and change the colour to the blue Pantone, and select the selection tool and click off. Now if I feel the name and job title are too close, I'll just select them and fine-tune the placement with the arrow keys on the keyboard. Soon I'll have something that looks like this. So looking at the finished design, I have these additional design elements here, the strokes and the pattern. Now I'm going to create this. So I'll press W to go into normal mode. I'll come over into the menu. I'll select the line tool. At the bottom of the menu, I'll set the stroke color to the blue Pantone. Then I'll come up and start roughly over on the right. I'll start from the top of the bleed line, then click and drag down and left and finish on the bottom bleed line. So with the selection tool, I'll select the line. I'll come over into the strokes panel and set the stroke to 0.5, so it's nice and light. With it selected, I'll just move it over to the right so it's positioned like so. Now looking at my scamp, I want the purple stroke line to come down as a reflection. So I'll quickly select the blue line, I'll press Command C to copy, I'll come up to Edit and select Paste in Place. Then I'll come up to Object, Transform and Flip Horizontal. With the reflected line selected, I'll move it over to the right. Now this line is here only to serve as a guide. So next, instead of the line tool, I'm going to use the pen tool. So over in the menu, I'll select the pen tool. So using the line as a guide, I'll start from the right bleed line, click over to where it joins, and click down along the guide and end on the right bleed, like so. Once the line is created, I'll be sure to click the stroke color in the menu and set this to the purple Pantone. Once happy, I'll press V to select the blue line and press backspace to remove. I'll press W to look at it in preview mode. So I'll zoom in where the lines meet. With the selection tool, I'll select the new line and change the stroke to 0.5. Then I'll right click and choose Arrange and Center Back. So that's looking much cleaner. Now, if the line across the center is not perfectly straight, I can press A to activate the Direct Selection tool, click on the end, and move up or down slightly with the arrow keys to straighten it like so. So all that's left to do is create the last line. So I'll press W to go into normal mode. I'll select the Line tool and draw a new line, set the stroke color to the grey Pantone. I'll make sure the stroke is set to 0.5. I'll right click the stroke and center back. I'll zoom in and make sure it's all clean. And that's looking pretty cool. Now the last thing I need to do is insert the last design element, the pattern. So looking at the finished design, we can see how the pattern fits into the design in the bottom triangle zone. Now we created this pattern in a previous episode, ready for the business card. If you have not seen how to create the pattern, I suggest you watch this video to learn how that was done. But now I'm going to bring in that pattern we created. But before that, I'm going to create an image frame to place it in. If you're not familiar with InDesign, to get an image into our document, we place them inside frames. These frames don't necessarily need to be boxes or rectangles. We can draw custom shapes and place images into them. So I want the pattern to only appear in this area here, where the lines cross and make this triangle shape below. So I'll press W to see the guides and bleeds area. And with the pen tool, I'm going to draw a shape like so over the area, making sure not to accidentally connect the lines to the strokes. I may have to just click away from the lines like so. And make sure to connect the end to make the shape. Now what we may find is the stroke effect is applied to our new shape. So with the shape selected, I'll come into the menu and make sure the stroke and fill color are set to transparent. Great. So with the box area selected, I'll press Command D to place an image into it. Up will pop the folder window. So I'll navigate to the project folder, in the My Project folder, in the Assets folder, and into the AI folder and select the pattern grey Pantone we created earlier and click OK. Upon click, the pattern will appear inside. Now if you are following along and you did not create the pattern earlier, then press Command D to insert an image. Instead of navigating to the My Project folder, navigate to the finished example, ID Works, Assets, AI and select the pattern grey Pantone from there. Easy. So once your pattern is in the area, it's now a case of repositioning the design element inside the frame. Now if your image is looking a little blurry, be sure to come up to View, scroll down to Display Performance and select High Quality Display. So I'll press Z to activate the zoom tool, press and hold Alt and click to zoom out, like so. So with the selection tool, we'll use this to select the elements and the frame in the composition. Now if we want to select content inside the frame, on this occasion the pattern image, I'll need to activate the Direct Selection tool. So I'll come into the menu and select the Direct Selection tool. With this selected, I can click inside the image frame and select the image that is inside the frame. And if we look closely, we can see the outline, which is quite large here. So if I start to click and drag, I can move the object around inside the frame. So I'm going to place my mouse cursor over the top left point, press and hold Shift and click and drag in like so to scale down. This will scale the image down inside the frame. So here I am looking to scale the pattern down so I can get a composition like this, where I can see the hexagons fit nicely and neatly in the strokes. Once happy, I'll press V to activate the selection tool, and I'll click off to deselect. I'll press W to take a look in preview mode, so that's looking okay. So that's the business card design finished. When you are happy, press Command S to save, navigate to the My Project folder in the Project folder, and save the document in the Work Docs folder as Business Card. So now you are able to edit the name and contact details for the next person and save as to create a new version. Now, if you watched the design process video earlier in this course, in that video I encouraged you to think about your own ideas. So as an exercise, if you have any of your own ideas, go ahead and try and create them using the same techniques demonstrated in this video. So that's how you can set up a simple business card in Adobe InDesign. Once your card is complete, you will then be ready to export the PDF ready for the printers to print out your cards. We will be learning later on in the course exactly how to export the document ready for print. But before that, it's time to set up the next item on our list, the letterhead. In the next video, I'm going to demonstrate and discuss how we can set up a letterhead design in Adobe InDesign. See you in the next video.